After a brilliant performance, it seems like Terence Crawford has done it again. Terence Crawford has worked himself and found himself backed into another corner. Amazing fighter, skilled fighter. Not always the sharpest knife in a drawer when it comes to the business acumen and the business sense. Terence Crawford wants to move up and fight Sebastian Fundora, the towering inferno. Sebastian Fundora, his very own promoter, Samson Lukowitz, has some thoughts that he just shared. That's what I'm going to go over right now in this video. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, back with some more boxing. Now, the Boxing Voice did a brand new interview with Samson Lukowitz, who is the longtime boxing promoter, but promoter of guys like David Benavidez as well as Sebastian Fundora. And full disclosure, he said some things the Bud Buddies would not like. I'm going to paraphrase some. And he basically said in many words, so many words, that Terence Crawford wants things his way, that Terence Crawford is trying to act like he's a Canelo of sorts, meaning like the hotshot A-side guy. He, in his mind, believes from a business perspective, he carries that type of value, which I think he's sadly mistaken, right? As a result, he's basically saying that Fundora, they're prepared to look at all the options and make the best business decision for a new champion at the 154-pound weight, Sebastian Fundora, and the direction he goes. Now, I will advise you guys that two of these options, out of the three options, two of them are signed with Al Heyman, signed and working with PBC. The other is Terence Crawford, who is a free agent. He comes with no promotional backing. He has no real seniority with PBC. And if you watch my content, I tell you that is part of the problem that we're dealing with here. In this world, it's like prison. I mean, that's the only analogy that just, I feel, rings so true to what we're dealing with. In prison, you got to click up. If you're a Crip and somebody else is a Blood, but both of y'all are black, in prison, if you know anything about prison, a lot of times the black people will click up. The white people, the ABs, will click up. The Mexicans, the Asians, and so on and so forth. Because in prison, we know what goes down. We know that that's a hard life. And you're in there with stone cold killers, right? So what better way than strength in numbers? Other people who look and sound like you, come from some of the same places, may have even known you on the outside. You know, what better way to have allies? So you're eating and somebody wants to harm you in prison on the yard, then your people can, like, you know, whistle or notify you and basically have your back. Terence Crawford, as a fighter, I don't really feel like he has that, because he left Top Rank. He was suing Top Rank. I don't even know what's up with that lawsuit now. And now he then went to BOK Prime. He was bragging about how BOK Prime does their business and they let the fighters in the meetings. And, you know, he's put out these statements like almost as if he wants to do it by himself. Fine. But don't be surprised when you're getting boxed out, period. Previously, Crawford says, Crawford on changing boxing business that eliminates a lot of things like promoters, managers. People are not going to like that. So anytime you embark on a journey such as you're trying to reinvent the wheel, he says he's changing the boxing business that eliminates a lot of things like promoters and managers. People are not going to like that. So Crawford knows what he's doing. I mean, I don't know that he knows what he's doing, but he knows what he's up against, because he previously said this, that people aren't going to like that. You're absolutely right. The business of boxing is not going to like that. The business of boxing is not going to allow you to make ludicrous demands, have no proper representation, and, you know, no seniority with PBC, and try to backdoor and circumvent other lucrative fights. Samson Lukowicz, in this TBV interview, another thing that he said and stated was basically that Crawford wants to be the co-promoter of the event as a free agent. Like, he wants dibs on that. I mean, he also said that Terence Crawford wants $15 million at least to step in the ring, including Sebastian Fundora, to which Samson is saying, this Errol fight, Errol, we can sell at the AT&T Stadium. Errol, despite losing to Crawford, he still has value and he still has a fan base that will come out to support. He's still from a big state like Texas, and we can make that do what it do. You've seen post-fight, Errol Spence hopped in the ring with Samson and with Sebastian Fundora, and a lot of people lost their minds. But again, this is business. Errol Spence looking to come back, looking to move in a new weight class, which is something he already should have done, right? He wants to get back on top. What better way than fight a guy who has 2 belts at the moment, possibly 1 belt when he fights him, and try to reinvent yourself in a new weight class, because you probably can't make 147 comfortably. So a lot of people are trying to act so confused as far as what is being said and act like they don't understand it, but it makes a lot of sense. In this new interview, Fundora's promoter is basically saying Crawford is too big for his britches. He thinks he's Canelo. He thinks he's like a Mayweather type of person. You guys have to understand, being a great fighter versus being a popular puts butts in seats fighter, these are not one and the same. If that was the case, then Dimitri Bivol would be a household name and a superstar, because he clearly dominated and beat Canelo Alvarez. But that's not the case. Dimitri Bivol, even with Canelo losing, and I'm talking about he lost, like, I gave Canelo like 2 rounds maybe versus Bivol. So despite getting flushed and wiped out by Bivol, it didn't catapult Bivol into a bigger star than Canelo Alvarez. In fact, a lot of people are anticipating his next fight with Jaime Munguia, right? That's the nature of the business. This stuff is basic arithmetic, basic stuff.
He heard Crawford wanted 15 million, and that's something he said he heard. But where are we hearing this from, and how true is it? Because you just said it's correct.
I just say to you that this is what I heard. And beside that, in prior negotiation, he want to be like he want to be a Canelo, put it that way. He want to be a businessman, and he want to be a fighter. And that is a big mistake.
That's Fundora's promoter saying Crawford wants to be like Canelo. He wants to be a businessman, but he wants to also negotiate as a fighter. And he says that's a big mistake.
I would say that the most honorable for Crawford is to fight Ennis. That is the truth. You know what I mean? And he have no problem with the weight, but he's looking for money. He want to fight Canelo for money, a payday, and that, you know, I don't know if he will get a payday with Fundora, because my understanding, he want to be like, and this I could, but I don't know if it's true or not, but like he be a co-promoter because he's a free agent, and that it will not happen. It will not happen that way.
So there you have it. He says Terence Crawford wants to act as a free agent, work and be a co-promoter, and fight Fundora. This is not complicated. So let me get this straight. You got Errol Spence, which is one option, and you got Tim Tszyu, which is another option, and then you have Terence Crawford, which is another option. I named 3 options. 2 of the 3 have worked with PBC. So they're already ingratiated in the system. They've already been enrolled. So it's like, let's pretend this was a job. Errol Spence and Tim Tszyu, they've already went through the e-learnings. They've already went through the training. They've already done the job interview. They've been working with the company. Errol Spence Jr., hey, man, stop that cat. And Tim Tszyu from Down Under, they both went through that job's orientation. Terence Crawford has one fight with PBC, did great in the performance, but he's also seemingly harder to deal with. His asking price is $15 million. All of this is what Bob Arum said, by the way, also. He said Bob Arum told you that Crawford was hard to deal with. He's not realistic. Crawford needs to get a promoter, etc., etc. And he said the fight would be easier to satisfy and actually be made if Crawford did some of these things. And he said that after the negotiations for the first Errol Spence fight fell apart. These are words from Bob Arum. So at the time, people said Bob Arum was hating. Bob Arum was just like, had an axe to grind with Terence Crawford specifically. But now it's looking like the actual problem is actually Crawford's mindset. You don't want to commit and do a multi-fight deal with PBC, yet you want their options, right? You want to work out and use all the gym equipment, but you don't want to pay a gym membership. But you had no problem getting and doing the fight with BLK Prime. And a better example is you had no problem with joining Top Rank for 10 plus years and being like committed to Top Rank. Now you didn't ask for any of this stuff with Top Rank. Now you understand the business or whatever, and you want all these options. So like I've been stating, I think Errol Spence is an attractive option and an easier fight to make. And so is Tim Tszyu. In this interview, Fundora's promoter, Samson, also stated that he's had some time to think about it. And he stated that there is a big interest for a Tim Tszyu rematch because some people believe it was unfair because he was bleeding from the top of his head. So he was kind of impaired or had a handicap in the fight. Some people believe all that blood in his eye, loss of blood, he might have been dizzy and fighting off fumes and stuff like that. So they felt, given that it was a freak accident, that Tim Tszyu didn't have, a fair one. And I agree to that, to be honest. Tim Tszyu was doing very good. His timing was on. He was clearly beating Fundora early. It was like things got shaky when he started bleeding and he got that nasty accidental elbow that opened him up. And his team, Tim Tszyu, definitely needs a new team in terms of not necessarily trainers, but he needs an experienced cut man. You got to get someone like a Stitch Duran or somebody who can help you. And at least if a cut is bad enough, you're not stopping the cut. However, a more experienced person just knows better and they know what to do. And at least maybe they can, because I even said this in my watch party. You guys can go to my watch party and hear it live. So I was watching the fight live, did a watch party live. You guys know this, right? And when Tim Tszyu would stand up for a new round about to go out, his head just started leaking. Nobody was touching him. Like, I could understand if Sebastian jabbed him because he was jabbing a lot. And Sebastian jabbed him and then it, re-aggravated, the blood started trickling. Tim Tszyu was bleeding into his eye just from standing up off the stool. You know what I mean? So I think his team, they definitely could have done a better job with the cut. Nonetheless, it's not looking good for Terence Crawford with his demands. Terence Crawford has these demands, and again, he has zero seniority with the PBC company, right? And people are acting like, oh, this is outrageous just because Errol Spence lost to Crawford. They think that the business of boxing automatically means Crawford gets to fight. But there's other parameters in making a fight. We've seen Lomachenko lose to Salido. Next fight with Gary Russell was an anticipated fight. They felt it made business sense, and they ran it, and that was a title fight. We seen Fundora get knocked out by Brian Mendoza. Literally got knocked out. Errol got knocked out. And actually, Fundora kind of got knocked out worse because Errol got knocked out on his feet and the referee stopped it. Fundora really couldn't get up. So that's just the nature of the beast. Boxing is like that sometimes. And look, you see articles. Terence Crawford's demands could delay the Fundora fight. Try to tell you. So again, you're going to have a lot of people who try to overcomplicate this. But just like this article says, Crawford's demands could delay the Fundora fight. The easiest thing would be to understand and know your role, like The Rock say, and commit to PBC for probably a multi-fight deal, and then they'd probably open up your options. But this whole Terence Crawford is owed something because he's pound for pound number one, or because people are saying he's the best, not really. You also have to move in accordance to the law of the land. Like, Crawford's trying to reinvent the wheel by doing it all on his own. You got a guy that is very skilled, like Naoya Inoue. Why he's not moving like a free agent. And then some people even have him number one pound for pound. So keep in mind, the whole pound for pound stuff is subjective. So why is Naoya Inoue, he could just say, oh, I'm pound for pound, I could do whatever he wants. He has Top Rank as a promoter, and he has a Japanese promoter. So he has two promoters, right? Same thing with Usyk. Usyk, I believe, is with K2, and, you know, he also did another deal, I believe, in the Middle East, right? So he has representation. Crawford's trying to secure PBC fights without actually committing to PBC and then expecting things to go his way. And lastly, as I've been saying, and as Fundora's promoter is saying, he also happens to be the least attractive financially. Errol, Spence, Texas, whatever you have to charge for the ticket prices, people will go out. Errol has done great numbers, and PBC has the data to prove it. You can look at Errol Spence versus Ugas and see 42,000 people went. You can look at Errol Spence versus Mikey Garcia and see almost 50,000 people went. You can watch Errol Spence, Sean Porter. I was there at all those fights except for Ugas. Errol Spence fought in LA versus Sean Porter. David Benavidez was the co-main event, and it was lit. I was there, right? So you see, Errol has been doing numbers with PBC, so they're able to see that. Tim Tszyu has a great backstory, given the fact that he was the champion and he just lost his belt to Fundora, and he lost it kind of with the ailment, with the bleeding head thing. So that's a backstory. People would definitely run that back to see how it would look in a rematch because they have the curiosity. Crawford has zero representation. He has only one fight with PBC. He doesn't want to commit to PBC. He doesn't really sell outside of Omaha. He's not a pay-per-view attraction, right? And people are acting like this is rocket science, that they prefer to go a different way. And it's just funny to me. Tim Tszyu rematch is a very attractive option, as is Errol Spence Jr. And they're also easier, at least from the outside looking in, easier to work with. So why would you choose, let me work with the person that's harder to work with, that doesn't want to commit, that doesn't want representation, and, you know, is asking for $15 million. Who knows? Errol Spence coming off a loss. Who knows how much he's expecting? Maybe he doesn't want that much. Maybe he's like, all right, let me earn myself back up. This is a title opportunity. So he's more reasonable. And then here's the thing is, like, Terence Crawford nor Errol have any fights at the 54 mark. Like, you haven't fought at 54. So you think you're owed something because you were undisputed at 47, and the WBO has a rule where the super champion can move up and automatically declare and become a mandatory. It's just, I've never seen this, and this level of delusion is uncommon. Here's another thing, just to give you an example. Let's say Anthony Joshua, right? Anthony Joshua versus Ruiz. Joshua in the first fight got knocked out by Andy Ruiz. Usyk was undisputed, right? Around the same time, undisputed at cruiserweight, and he was the super champion. He won the World Boxing Super Series, right? If Usyk moved up to heavyweight, hadn't done anything, hadn't fought Chaz Tablespoon, hadn't fought Derek Chisora, but he wanted to impose his mandatory status, the business of boxing, Eddie Hearn, who just had his fighter knocked out, Joshua knocked out by Andy Ruiz, Usyk would not be able to get in the way and prevent the Andy Ruiz versus Anthony Joshua part 2 in the Middle East, even if he wanted to, even if he had moved up and said, hey, I'm the super champion, make the mandatory. Because again, that was a rematch scenario, just like Tim Tszyu and Fundora, and it was an attractive option that made a lot of sense. Can Joshua get his belt back? So Usyk, I think, would be more realistic and understanding of that. Hey, I've done nothing at heavyweight. I was the man at cruiserweight. So let them fight. And then, you know, I'll try to use my positioning. Crawford doesn't want to do that. And he's been out the ring since July, which only hurts him. He's 36 years old. I believe he'll be 37 this year. And you've been fighting one time a year. You don't have the leverage that you think you have, period.